Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islam in Life with me, Reza Kazim. We have the topic of this program being Islam against racism. Who isn't against racism? Even the racists do not like to call themselves racist. Are the overt racists not just a distraction from recognizing the structural or institutional racism?
The Holy Quran says, "O people, we have created you male and female, and made you nations and tribes, that you may know one another. Verily, the most noble of you to Allah is the most righteous of you." Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, set a powerful example against racism in the manner in which he treated his companions. Bilal, of African descent, was given the major honor of being the muazzin, even when Arabic was not his first language. He was chosen for his righteousness. The Holy Prophet broke all racism barriers by his treatment of Bilal. But the world we live in today, especially the Western world, has completely different sets of values in matters of racism. Recent media reports about Prince Harry of the British monarchy dating a biracial American actress has unearthed the racism prevalent in the Western media. There was much written about the possible tainting of the blue blood that the royals are known to possess by the black blood of the actress. How do the two cultures compare?
We're honored to be joined by our esteemed guest, Professor Tariq Ramadan, to discuss all of these issues. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. I want to actually start off by picking up on one of the points that was mentioned in there about this idea that we sometimes have, as was said in the introduction. Are we not in danger of kind of replicating what the European version of racism was, and how slavery was actually introduced, and having the people from the Asian or the black backgrounds being considered as slaves, and we're projecting that history backwards into that era? Is that something that happens, or?
It could happen. The problem is the way we have to deal with our own history. As Muslims, and as you know, history is not an exact science, but still we have facts and we know many things about the way the societies at the beginning were structured, and the systemic reality that we have. Yes, at the time of the Prophet and at the beginning and throughout our history, there is the reality of slavery, and there are mechanisms where people were able to free themselves, and others where there was alienation, there was oppression, and there was injustice. But still, what was there is the principle of slavery was within the cultures and the southern cultures in a way which in fact should be understood as completely in contradiction with the Islamic principles.
Now, within the context of having this idea of Islam considering, or that one group of people has superior lineage to another, or whatever, you know, that hierarchy of race, as it were, did that exist within the time of the Prophet in terms of what he projected as Islam?
No, it was there when Islam came, but it was not supported by Islam. And so this is why the rich people and the powerful, when he came with a liberating message, was really about, no, it cannot be the clans and the tribes are not the structure of power on which we are going to rely. At the end of the day, what is important is your faith. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The more dignified among you is the one who has the deeper love, reverential love or piety. That's has to do with the invisible side. So it's not in your blood, it's not in your color, it's not in your social status, it's in the way you are connected to God. This is what is going to bring you. So there is a spiritual message which is saying you are equal, there is one humanity, and the hierarchy should be based on your piety and your God consciousness. So this is something which is coming from Islam, was a liberating message here, and the people who came first following the Prophet, peace be upon him, were poor people and marginalized people, among them some of the black people and the slaves, because they understood that with Islam, this is where I'm going to find freedom, because this is what the message is all about. So we have to come with something which is deeper than only to repeat Islam is against racism and oppression, or this kind of hierarchy between, you know, the people when it comes to the tribes and the black, the skin color and things like this. I think we have to go deeper than that, because what we got at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, was the structure of a society where the powerful were using their power to say that the Muslim community was made up of poor people and slaves. So we need to get the social structure. We need to deal with the social structure, not only with the status. And the philosophy behind it, which is very important, because in our history as Muslims, we have lots of Arabs who have indulged in slavery. That's the reality of it, and sometimes justifying it in the name of Islam.
And this idea of actually trying to promote this equality that has been suggested by the Prophet and that's been propagated by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, how do we go about linking into that?
You know, we have to come back to the very essence of the Islamic message here, and to understand that today, look, we are here, we are talking, and we see what is happening in the United States of America. And so how many are really experiencing and living the American dream, where you have black people, African American, Latinos, facing the reality of racism every day, exactly the same in Europe. Not only this, we have a new type of racism now with Islamophobia. And many of the things that we have now about Muslims were experienced when it came to the Jews during the Second World War. So we need to understand the structure, not only the fact. There is a structure here. There is something, you know, the white supremacists, for example, they're not only coming with an idea. It's the whole structure, the way they think about the society and how they distribute power. So you can't speak about racism without talking about the structure of power within a society.
We're going to come back to the structure. We do like to keep this show as interactive as possible and really value your opinion. Here's what you sent us this week.
This week we asked, why is Islam the most anti-racism religion? Suleiman from Morocco said, Islam is the most anti-racist religion because you see these values repeatedly discussed in the Holy Quran and in Prophet's teachings. No other religion speaks out so much against racism. Insia from Canada said, history is proof of the fact that Islam is a religion of equality, with so many examples of how varied companions of the Holy Prophet were. People of all colours and ethnicity are welcomed and judged purely on the basis of their devotion. And Amina from France said, the Holy Quran tells us clearly that the only measure of a person's superiority in the eyes of Allah is his or her piety. Race or colour means absolutely nothing.
Islam brings everyone together, any color, any age, any race, everyone is a family. You can go into the mosque and you can be as a family together, sit down together, talk about anything, no matter what the color, and everyone is a big family in Islam.
Islam is the religion of equality, so racism these days could be anything. It could be, again, means sexuality, or it's your color of your skin, or your religion, or whatever. But as far as I'm not a religious scholar, I'm a very ordinary Muslim, so as far as I understand the teachings of Islam, it tells you the equality. You have to treat equally everybody, regardless of their color of their skin, their gender, or their religion, or whatever.
Any person who is better do the prayers, be justice, trustworthy will be the best. It's not according to your race or where you come from or according to your color.
Well, people do not have any knowledge about Islam. Probably people did not read about the Quran. If they read the Quran, they would find out that Quran is against racism.
That's all the comments we have for this week. If you'd like to have your views featured in the show, be sure to follow us on Facebook or join us on Twitter. Now you can send your own videos with your comments and even your questions to islamandlife@presstv.com.
We were talking about, and you're mentioning the idea about structure. What do you mean by structural issues to do with racism?
Yes, that's a very deep question when it comes to a society. The way a society is structured is three things. Is where are you going to find power? So it's the institutionalized way you deal with power. So it could be institutions or it could be the legal system. The legal is structural. It's structuring our interpersonal relationship. In this, you can have racism. So an institutionalized racism means that by law, the way you are going to find your way within the society is going to be difficult. When it comes to the state in itself, there is a way that you have structural and state racism, is the way the state is going to deal with the citizens or to define the level of citizenship within. So it's structural. And then the whole dynamic could be not only the institution and the state structure, is the way there is a social dynamics. For example, you can see that in some of the school systems, the way you are going to enter into the school system and the opportunities that you have are not the same. So it could be that it's going to be easier for someone, they are coming from a white background, for example, or even in Muslim majority countries that you can have the same, which is supporting the Muslims versus the others. It could happen, and it happens, in fact, in our history. So we have to go deep in this, which means it's not only targeting somebody, it's the way we consider her or him within the institutions, the states, and the dynamics within.
And so in terms of the idea of how, for example, the mainstream media deals with Muslims, there's this idea of freedom of speech and freedom of, having the ability to be able to say if you can get your point across. Is that freedom actually there, or is there racism within that media structure and mainstream media that exists in the West?
And that's a very good point that you added into the discussion, because media is, as we say, the fourth power within the society, but it's deeper than that. It's where the expression, that where you can be vocal. In fact, the media should be the space where you can challenge the systemic and structural racism that you have elsewhere. But in fact, it's going hand in hand with the system itself. So it's mirroring the whole system. So you can find exactly the same privileges. The people who are going to talk within the media are the same who are, in fact, organizing or keeping the structural racism that we have. So it's very difficult for the victims of racism to be able to have a space within media and to express themselves.
But that's not what the press would say. Press would argue that we have our freedoms, we challenge the system, we challenge the establishment, and we do everything that we can. How would you respond to them? Because they're quite vocal about it.
They are vocal, but it's silly. It has no, it's not working. Any citizen, anyone who is a bit aware of the way, things are coming to her or to him, is aware that it's not working that way. It's not, an open space for anybody to speak out, and especially victims of racism. That's not. It's very deep that you can see that when it comes to freedom of expression, or who has the right to speak out within a society, always the same. And it's connected with the media, because the media is not only, expression. Media, it's business. It's money, it's power. So who is going to speak? How do you think that a state with its institution is going to open up a space within the media, destroying the whole system that is keeping the society and the privileges and power for some people? It cannot work like this. These are the same people sometimes. So this is what we are talking about when it's come to the systemic, the structural dimension that you have within our societies. And I would say the only way for people who are victims of races to go beyond the whole dynamic. It's not to keep the discussion on the fact and to be victims. It's to understand in which way you are within the process and trying to empower your presence within the system by challenging power and challenging the cultural capital of the privileged people within the society are the supremacists when it comes to a specific culture, a specific color, or a specific group within the community.
Continuing that idea a little bit further, one of the things that, for example, Daily Mail, which is seen as a right-wing, some would call it a racist paper, in terms of the narrative that it's constantly pumping out, actually came on and said that it was the first paper that challenged the racism of the Metropolitan Police with regards to the Stephen Lawrence case and so on. Now, how do you square the normal narrative that seems to be being pumped out by the Daily Mail and its foray into picking up this one issue and saying, oh, look, we're not racist, we just talk about issues? How would you, square those two things?
Exactly the way we were talking about it. You can have a newspaper or, taking one story and making it a symbol. But that's the problem. You don't fight racism only with symbols. If this would be the case, in the United States of America, the symbol Barack Obama would have, put an end to anything, which was, and it's not at all the case, because it's under Obama that you have Black Lives Matter. It's exactly the opposite. They're saying it's even worse. So the symbol could just, in fact, hide the very existence of a dynamic. So some of the newspapers are part of the dynamic and they take one and say, oh, look, we are not racist. This is what we are doing. So, but the fact that you are talking about this one and you don't talk about the whole system, the whole way it works, means that you are not helping this liberation process and you are not, in fact, involved in putting an end in races, but taking a symbol to hide the reality at the grassroots level. And this is happening with so many media and so many people and so many politicians in the way they take some symbols to avoid talking about the logic and the rational behind it.
There's also this blue blood concept that's constantly being talked about and whatever, or sometimes being talked about. Any thoughts on that kind of an idea?
I think that our problem is very often because we have a problem with the racists, but we also have a problem with the people who are fighting racism in the way they are putting the whole understanding or the big picture. It's deeper than only I don't like you because of your religion or because of your color. It has to do with you are challenging power. It has to do with economics. It has to do with money. It has to do with media. And this is where today we have within our society in the UK privileges. We have people keeping their privileges and targeting in a way not directly with racist talks, but through our institutions within the society, a specific community or specific people with their religion and their color skin. How this is going to be revealed or being expressed or being embodied within our society, the starting point could be the education, the school system, and the way. So we have. Tell me how it works with your school system. I would detect the first signs of this racist dynamic within our society. And we have it everywhere. And by the way, we are talking about the West here, but we have to be serious about the fact that in many Muslim majority countries, we have exactly the same. I saw this in a way which is not acceptable. So we sometimes have to come back to Islam. And for example, saying, Islam is the religion which is the more or the clearer or the most important messages coming from Islam when it comes to racism. I would be cautious with this because in fact in Christianity, in Judaism, and in other it might be not the case in the Hindu tradition because of the caste and the system here that is problematic. But we are all saying the same. So the problem has not to do with the message, has to do with us as believers.
One of the issues that comes up with this narrative that you've suggested is this idea that Muslim countries and Muslim majority countries which have been colonized have adopted the hierarchies that the colonizer has actually given. So within that context, there has been a projection of this. How would you respond to that?
Yes, I think that's right. The most dangerous colonization is the colonization of the minds, and Muslims have very often integrated the structure that were imposed onto them in the way they were thinking. To the point, Frantz Fanon was saying, one of the racist characteristics of colonialism is to target the woman. Free the woman, you will free the people, because this is, and it's a perception which has to do with the way you translate power with these people, the indigenous, these people who are backward. So there is here a mindset which is, how am I going to civilize you? So this is racist. This is pure racism. This is a deep way of translating the reality of racism, and this is where, as Muslims, we first, not only as Muslims, by the way, as potential colonized people or after the colonization, to be equipped with the instruments of our own intellectual, cultural, and social independence. So we need to be clear on this. Racism has to do with power, and you face power with a clear message that you are now dealing with the system, not only with the thoughts.
One of the things that has come up is this idea of Prince Harry of the UK being criticised for dating a black woman, and the issues that have come up that somehow as a result of this the royal blood is going to be tainted and so on and so forth. That whole concept, how do you, where do you start in actually dealing with this whole thing? First, the concept of monarchy itself and the implied racism that exists within that, but also this criticism of him dating the black person and the fact that that so-called blood will be tainted in terms of how it progresses.
No, it's outrageous even just to talk about something like this. But it means something quite interesting, is that behind this monarchy and this ideal, many are not only talking about the status, they are talking about the white supremacy. It's the whiteness. Britishness has to be with being black, white and not black. Anything which has to do with black, or even the Arabs, what happened even with Princess Diana was also something which is, an Arab within the family. That's a problem. So you have this before as something which is challenging the fact that it's a power symbolizing Britain, but with the cultural side of the equation, which is whiteness, as opposed to anything else, so not white. So I think that we have to be clear on this, but by saying what? Only by challenging it, by saying, no, this is something which has to do with the past, and the historical dynamic is going to shake and all this. We have to be patient, we have to be clear. So our principles should be clear, and our way of dealing with the institutionalized and structural races should be clear as well. And we have to rely on time by doing what we have to do. Social equality, no racism, that's not acceptable, and we cannot accept any translation of this on the ground in our daily life.
Many interesting points being made. Our preoccupation with individual acts of xenophobia or of racial mixing, which are held up as examples of racism or anti-racist models or multiculturalism, often move the focus away from the structural racism that exists in the world today. The Islamic focus against racism needs to take into account, as well as find ways of countering the structural racism that is rampant in the world today. That's all the time we have for today. I would like to thank Professor Tariq Ramadan for joining us, and I thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.